Hey guys, what's up? It's Allie. So the official trailer for Rise of Shadows, Hearthstone's newest expansion, has just been released. We got introduced to some characters that we're familiar with that are now a part of this team of villains trying to take the magical city of Dalaran, and we also got to see some new cards. So I will be reviewing those and giving you guys my thoughts. So I hope you guys enjoy the video. So the 9 classes in Hearthstone have been split into villains and heroes, I guess. For the villains, we've got Warlock, Warrior, Priest, Shaman, and Rogue. I guess fighting for Team Evil. And then Paladin, Mage, Druid, and Hunter are going to be the heroes of Rise of Shadows. So to kick off the card reviews here, we've got Archvillain Rafaam, the Supreme Archaeologist, representing the Warlock villain in the Warlock class. Archvillain Rafaam is a 7-mana 7/8 legendary taunt with the battle cry, replace your hand and deck with legendary minions. So very reminiscent of Alliestrasza with the Golden Monkey that came out in League of Explorers. I kind of, when first looking at Archvillain Rafaam, drew the comparison to Lich King a little bit, because Lich King is a high value card that happens to be a taunt. If Lich King wasn't a taunt, it would be significantly worse, as I feel with Rafaam here. So the fact that you can kind of drop him for value in the late game without putting yourself in too scary of a situation, like the fact he has taunt, I think makes him pretty good. I can't really see him going in anything other than a control warlock type of deck. Like I don't see why you would put it in Zoo. Maybe a mid-range deck potentially. I guess we'll have to see what other warlock cards come out in this expansion. Sometimes in the late game with warlock, you know, or I'd be playing a control warlock deck, you get Defiles stuck in your hand. Rip Defile, by the way, going to miss you. Or other little cards that just don't really do that much for the game, and you really want like powerful endgame stuff to kind of shut the game down. So I could see Rafaam being good in that sense of just kind of like that value card that you have in your deck that, you know, gives you the gas to kind of close out the rest of the game. So I think we will see Rafaam quite a bit. Obviously, it depends what other Warlock cards come out to complement him, but overall, I think Archvillain Rafaam is going to be pretty darn good. Obviously, the villain that is going to represent Shaman is Hagatha, as there is already a Hagatha hero card for Shaman already. So one of her cards, one of her schemes, called Hagatha's Scheme, is a 5-mana spell that deals 1 damage to all minions, and it upgrades each turn that it is in your hand. So it can become a 5-mana, deal 10 damage, you know, if it stays in your hand for 10 turns. I'm really happy that Shaman's getting this spell, because I feel like with Volcano rotating out, it needs something else other than just Lightning Storm to kind of, you know, complement the control Shaman archetype. A lot of really powerful Shaman decks have been aggressive decks, but Shutterwalk did exist for a time, and I do think there might be some kind of mid-rangey control deck that still is going to rely on AoE, and with Volcano going, Hagatha's Scheme can be a really good option. Obviously, Volcano, if you draw Volcano, if you top deck it, like you absolutely need to clear the board against an aggro deck, and you top deck Volcano, it's just as good as it always is when you top deck it, but Hagatha's Scheme only dealing 1 damage. If you top deck it, won't be as good. But in general, I don't think it takes too long for this card to be pretty darn good. And the fact that it doesn't have any overload, I think is pretty significant too when comparing it to Volcano. So yeah, I'm happy that Shaman is getting another AoE card to kind of complement the slower decks that Shaman can sometimes have. One of the new priest cards is called Forbidden Words. It is a 0-mana spell. Spend all of your mana and destroy a minion with that much attack or less. So we saw this forbidden mechanic show up in Whispers of the Old Gods, and it is making a comeback now in Rise of Shadows. The card art has Madame Lazul, who is going to be the villain that is representing the priest class. So yeah, I think this card is insane. The classic thing that everyone has been saying feeling is, oh my god, Priest can finally remove 4 attack minions. I feel like Priest went through this phase where it was so bad for so long, and then it just continually is getting powerful cards. Like, got Psychic Scream and Mass Hysteria, and now Forbidden Words I think is going to be a great addition to Priest removal cards. So, super flexible card. You know, you can use it to kill something aggressive in the early game if, you know, an aggro deck is smorking you down, or, you know, very flexible for the late game just to kill a big powerful minion that you need to remove if you don't want to run something like a Shadow Word Death or a Shadow Word Pain for the early game. So not much else to say about this. I just think we're going to see it a lot. Great addition to Priest. Oh, one more thing I should mention is Madame Lazul is a hero for Priest that you can actually get with the pre-order bundle. If you pre-order the biggest pack, you get Madame Lazul as a Priest hero to play with, kind of like Mecha Jiraxis in Boomsday. Moving on to Rogue, we've got Togwaggle representing the Rogue villain, and the new card that we saw is called the Evil Miscreant. It is a 3-mana 1/5 combo card. Add 2 random lackeys to your hand. So lackeys are 1/1 minions that have a powerful battle cry. I kind of drew the comparison to spare parts from early expansions, but the lackeys are much more powerful than spare parts. Some of them are, you know, Battlecry, discover a spell, transform a friendly minion into one that costs 1 more, summon a random 2-cost minion, give a friendly minion +1 attack and rush, and then one of them is deal 2 damage. So those are some pretty powerful effects that can be really clutch at certain points in the game. And you get 2. So the Evil Miscreant is in fact a combo card, of course, but a 3-mana 1/5 isn't too bad when you consider the stats from the 2 other minions, or the 2 lackeys that are going to be going into your hand. So I could see, you know, coining this out on 2 being pretty darn good in Rogue decks. So I think the card itself is pretty decent because these lackeys are pretty powerful. I don't know exactly what kind of Rogue deck that it will go into. 1-mana 1/1s, cheap cards are always good for activating combo cards in Rogue, even though we're losing a lot of really powerful combo cards like Vile Spine and Minstrel and all of them, but Rogue traditionally needs, you know, cheap stuff for to activate its combo card abilities. So I think that this will see play. Not exactly sure what Rogue deck it will go in, as I said earlier. Overall, I think it's a pretty decent card for Rogue. Moving on to a new Druid card is a 8-mana spell called the Force Aid. It's a twin spell and it summons 5 2/2 treants. Now, Twin Spell is a new mechanic where you can cast a spell twice. It doesn't go away in your hand like with Echo. You can cast it 1 turn and then use it 2 or 3 turns later if you want to. The Force Aid. So when I first saw this card, I was like, it has to be bad. There's no way an 8-mana summon 5 2/2 treants can really be that good. But honestly, the more that I thought about it, the fact that you can cast the turn later, like immediately after, like, you know, 5 2/2s on the board can be threatening because of things like Savage Roar and Branching Paths, right? So I do think it's okay, but it is so easily cleared with AoE. But the fact that you can immediately cast it again after the original turn makes me think that maybe it's not as bad as I originally thought. Honestly, it's kind of a toss-up. I'm not sure. I think that Token Druid has traditionally been a archetype that needs to have cheaper stuff. You're trying to kill your opponent in the first half of the game with cheap stuff and then buffing them up with like Power of the Wild. And this is an 8-mana card, so this is pretty expensive. But I think if it does exist, it wouldn't be Token Druid, it would just be Treant Druid, which I guess is essentially tokens, but it would be a different kind of Druid because there are Treant cards that, you know, are synergistic that, you know, could be powerful. So I'm a little undecided. I'm curious to get your thoughts. When I first looked at it, I didn't think it was that great, but the fact that you can cast a second copy immediately after AoE is what I think gives me some hope for this card. One of the neutral cards is called the Spellword Jeweler. It is a 3-mana 3/4 rare battlecry. Your hero cannot be targeted by spells or hero powers until your next turn. So traditionally in Hearthstone, any 3-mana 3/4 with upside is pretty darn good. And I think that definitely holds true with this new card. It disrupts combos, which I think is super cool. So anything that's neutral that can kind of stop your opponent from killing you in one turn is good in my book. So I'm sure that we will see the Spellword Jeweler in a lot of different decks as a kind of anti-combo card. So yeah, not much else to say about that other than I think that's just a really solid addition for the Year of the Dragon. One of the other neutral cards that we got our first look at is Chef Noemi. It is a 7-mana 6/6 neutral legendary with the battle cry, if your deck is empty, summon 6 6/6 Greasefire Elementals. So I love the flavor of this card. This is hilarious. I don't know how many decks Chef Noemi is really gonna go in, but it's fun. And the first thing that came to mind when thinking of this card was maybe it could fit in some kind of aggressive-ish rogue deck that has Noemi as the endgame with Myra's Unstable Element. So, Myra's Unstable Element draws you the rest of your deck. So I don't know how you'd guarantee Chef Noemi. Maybe you'd wait to play Myra's until you had Chef Noemi in hand. But what you could do is, play Myra's, get Chef Noemi, drop the elementals on the board, and it's only 6 6/6s. 6 6/6s. 6 6/6s. So you could play a lab recruiter potentially after. I guess your deck wouldn't really be empty at that point, but still you could shuffle more Noemis in there and potentially draw the cards and keep playing them. Or Shadow Step could potentially work in this rogue deck. So that was the first thing that came to mind when thinking of how to play with Chef Noemi. I think it would have to be in a very specific type of deck because I think one swing of 6 6/6s on the board can be easily AoE'd with a Twisting Nether or something like that. So you'd have to make a deck very specific for Chef Noemi, and I think it would be in something like Rogue. But fun card, don't know how much play it will really see, but flavorful, I guess, of this expansion. Alright guys, so I saved the best for last, or my favorite, obviously is Caligos. It's Mage, which is my favorite class, and it's Dragons, which you guys know that I love. So Caligos is a member of the Blue Dragon Flight. It is the Mage Legendary, a 10-mana 4/12 with your first spell each turn costs 0, and Battlecry also discover a spell. So I think Caligos is pretty darn good. It's value generation in that you get to discover a spell, and it also allows you to get a free Pyroblast out if you want to. So the spell that is cost 0 isn't just the one that you discover, that can be a spell from your deck. So it's flexible, it generates value, and it's a chunky, powerful minion. So definitely was my favorite of all the cards that I saw, and I'm really excited to play with this. I hope that there are mage decks that complement Caligos, because we are definitely losing some powerful cards like Meteor and Dragon's Fury that enabled Control Mage. So we still have Flame Strike and Blizzard and stuff like that, so I have hope that there will be a mage deck to complement Caligos. But yeah, definitely my favorite card that we saw so far, obviously. And yeah, I think this is going to be a fantastic addition to Mage. Well, there you have it, folks. Those are the newest cards that we got to see and my take on them. In general, I really like the theme Rise of Shadows, and this is the first time that the Hearthstone expansions throughout the year are going to coincide with each other. It's going to be a continuing storyline as opposed to just individual expansions like we've seen in the past. So we're gonna get to follow this team of evil villains, and I guess, you know, see how the story unfolds throughout the year. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed my take on some of the new cards. Expect more reviews to come in the future. Leave a comment below letting me know what you think of the new expansion and what your favorite card is.